Welcome to the Tuesday edition of Off the Wire Daily. I am your host, Noel Lynn, aka the Cajun Libertarian, and we have an absolutely spicy show lined up for you right now. You're not going to want to miss 1 second of it. I promise you, I can guarantee you every second of this less than 20-minute podcast will be worth your time. We have Anchor Collins, we have videos, we have articles, we have everything in between, and it's going to be a banger. So please like the show, share it with your friends, subscribe to my YouTube channel, follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Also, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and basically anywhere where you can get your podcasts. Please like, follow, subscribe, and on all of them, hit the notifications bell so that every time content drops, you will know about it. This show is brought to you by @_infinite zeal. That's @_infinite zeal. Please go follow him on Twitter. Check out the link in his bio. That's @_infinite zeal. This episode is also brought to you by the Lunatic Libertarian. You can follow him on Facebook and then go subscribe to his YouTube channel, please, and thank you, since they have decided to donate their time and money to sponsoring this show to help out this movement that you're a part of. @_infinite zeal. And at the Lunatic Libertarian, Infinite Zeal on Twitter, Lunatic Libertarian on Facebook and YouTube. Subscribe, hit the notifications bell so that every time he goes live, you will also know about it. Now, without further ado, let's get into this exceptionally spicy content. We have Anchor Collins. If you want to call in, go to Spotify for podcasters.com and find me, the Cajun Libertarian, and then leave me in, I was going to say, an Anchor call-in moment. Actually, if you check the link in my Twitter bio, there is the link's right there at the anchor.fm. You can click it and leave a voice message. I love these messages. So please, please, please call in. If you hate me, if you love me, or anywhere in between, please call in. I love these things. So let's hear what he has to say. This is from Angelo on Twitter.
All right, so this is Angelo from Twitter, and just testing to make sure that you get this. But my initial question was, how do you pronounce your name? Is it Noel or Noel? I have friends that use both, so why don't we start there for proper introduction?
Great. Okay, so it's Noel, just like Christmas. Absolutely great. Thank you, Angelo. All right, so here's his follow-up question, which is actually the question.
All right, so anyway, either it's Noel or Noel, either way, you'll get back to me on that. But the comment I want to make is this, in reference to our previous exchange on Twitter: if we eliminate the implausible, we can focus on the plausible. Okay, so basically, for those that are not familiar with what I'm saying, this notion of anarcho-capitalism is simply not plausible. Period. End of sentence. A government will always exist. It always has existed. The question is, what do we do about it currently? So, as a way forward for us libertarians, my point would be, let's stop participating in what is otherwise known as mental masturbation and things that are simply not possible. Let's focus on what we can really do to unite our party, to unite our cause, to unite our message. That's pretty much it. Let's go from there.
Outstanding. Yes, very good. Thank you very much, Angelo. There, for some that may be confused, that still was very PG. That's kid friendly. Mental masturbation is a metaphorical term. For those that don't understand, I expect that everyone understands. However, that is still, to me, kid friendly. Yes, many of us are anarcho-capitalists. We believe in a privatized society. The reason that we discuss those topics specifically is because if you can convince people, which is very easy to do with basic logic, to buy into the idea that anarcho-capitalism is a real acceptable thought experience or experiment, then you can begin to mitigate government, right? So it's like, okay, You don't need taxes. So, well, how will the roads be funded? Let's take it to the most fundamental argument against libertarianism. Well, Amazon wants to sell their packages. Walmart wants to sell their product. McDonald's wants to sell their trash burgers that cause you fat and die from cholesterol, right? So, yes, they will buy the roads. You don't need taxation to fund the freaking roads. That's an absurdly ridiculous, moronic, anti intellectual idea. These businesses, these corporations will fund the systems that they want to help make them money. Now, if we can start from there, which is an obviously basic intellectual standpoint that stands true and is inarguable, then we can mitigate government and we can start to move the needle back towards less government from there. Thank you so much for your call in. And I expect more call ins from you and from others. Now, obviously, that is a very shortened definition and explanation as to what he's talking about, but that's the starting point right there, right? That's the starting point, and that's where I wanted to focus on that anchor calling. So let's continue that conversation from there, and then we can expand upon it intellectually, philosophically, and with actual practical implications as to how we can start to eliminate the government from our lives while still being able to render the services that are needed to operate within a successful capitalistic society. With that being said, let's move on to the spicy content. I am going to give you this headline that I am so unbelievably fired up about, and we will spend the entire rest of the episode, the rest of the entirety of the episode on this one headline. But obviously, we're going to sprinkle in a lot more. Here's the headline: JP Morgan has settled a class action lawsuit with one of Jeffrey Epstein's victims, from businessinsider.com. That's from today. Today. Now, you might be asking yourself, Noel or Cajun, how in the world could that be spicy? Well, for one, Jeffrey Epstein is involved in the headline. For two, let me line it out for you. As many of you know, were you specifically to be caught in the same scandal, I've got to self-censor here for obvious reasons. The same scandal, Jeffrey freaking Epstein. I bit my lip. That same scandal. Had you been caught up in that, where would you be right now? Comment below. Where would you be? You know where. You know where. You know where you would be. Period. Full stop. Now, I do not preach at anyone on this show, and you all know that. For those of you that listen habitually, that are recurring listeners of the show, I love you. Thank you so much. Please spread the word. For those of you that are just coming to the show, the new listeners, which there are many, I do not preach at my audience despite me being a devout disciple of Christ. I don't. I just live my life. I tell you that Christ guides my life. And then I hope that you can come to me or people within your community, whoever that may be, and ask questions about Christianity, to put it mildly. So, with that being said, I want to read to you some of the book of the Old Testament. Now, over the last month, and this is going to be very short, by the way, over the last month, my pastor, who's an excellent pastor, got a bachelor's degree or master's degree in theology, and like a good pastor does, we've been discussing how to defeat the demonic activity in our lives. in something that he's been referencing and cross-referencing like any good pastor does is the Old Testament versus the New Testament. Here's the Old Testament book that he's been talking about. It's called Habakkuk. So I wanted to start to dig into it. And here's what I came across. And I want you to tell me. You can be an absolute atheist and hear what I'm about to say. This is from the Old Testament. So at a minimum, this is well over 2,000 years old. You tell me what country this sounds like. According to Google, this is somewhere around 7th century BC, before Christ, 7th century. So maybe 700 years before the 2,000 years that I just referenced. Now, you tell me what this sounds like. Regardless of whether or not you're religious, doesn't matter. Listen to this. The oracle which Habakkuk the prophet saw. How long, O Lord, will I call for help, and you will not hear? I cry out to you, violence, yet you do not save. Why do you make me see iniquity and cause me to look on wickedness? Yes, destruction and violence are before me. Strife exists and contention arises. Therefore, the law is ignored and justice is never upheld. For the wicked surround the righteous, therefore justice comes out perverted. Here's the tweet from Libertarian Party of Mississippi, where I found this article. The tweet said, and not one pedo will be arrested. I will give to you that last paragraph. I read the whole thing because Habakkuk, the prophet, is crying out to God, asking, why on earth are we still seeing all of this absolute destruction, violence, and abhorrent disrespect for basic righteousness and the law? Strife exists and contention arises. Therefore, the law is ignored and justice is never upheld. For the wicked surround the righteous. Therefore, justice comes out perverted. LP, Mississippi. There will not be one pedo held accountable. Here's the article. JP Morgan, and this is from businessinsider.com 612. Just today, literally today. JP Morgan Chase has reached an quote unquote agreement in principle over a class action lawsuit filed by one of Jeffrey Epstein's victims. Quote, the parties believe this settlement is in the best interest of all parties, especially the survivors who were the victims of Epstein's terrible abuse. End quote. JP Morgan and the victims' lawyers said in a joint statement. Unbelievable. Do I need to go further? These disgusting psychopaths that have abused children and continue to spit in your face while they get away with it. Where's the list? There is no equal justice or equal application of the law in this country anymore. And what God tells Habakkuk in this book is that you have basically, in a nutshell, you've become so freaking perverse. Your nation is so perverse that I'm literally going to allow the worst of mankind to come in and take over your nation. I kid you not. And it gets more applicable from there. I'm going to end the show with a video from the CEO of BlackRock and another paragraph from Habakkuk. I kid you not. If you can't see the difference between a 2,000 to 3,000 year old writing, regardless of whether or not you think it's a prophet, it's a recorded historical document between that nation that Habakkuk is crying out to God to And God saying, yeah, y'all have gotten so out of control, I'm going to let them take over. Now, it's up to you to course correct. And then what I'm going to share at the end of this, yeah, I don't know what to tell you. Let's keep going. The lawsuit was filed in District Court of the Southern District of New York in November. The plaintiff is an unnamed person who met Epstein when she was working as a ballet dancer in New York. The lawsuit said she was quote unquote sexually abused and trafficked by Epstein for several years, and on occasion by some of his friends. The lawsuit alleged that J.P. Morgan knowingly and intentionally participated in the Epstein sex trafficking venture from roughly 2000 to 2013 by providing its, quote, essential financial underpinnings and ignoring red flags. The lawsuit said Epstein agreed to bring ultra wealthy clients to the bank, and in exchange, Jess Staley, a longtime executive, would use his clout. This is a quote. Would use his clout within J.P. Morgan to make Epstein untouchable. End quote. Quote. J.P. Morgan chose facilitating a child sexual abuse and sex trafficking operation for many years, including including through the criminal investigation and incarceration of Jeffrey Epstein in order to churn profits, end quote, the lawsuit said. Quote, any association with him was a mistake and we regret it, JP Morgan said in a statement. We would have never continued to do business with him if we believed he was using our bank in any way to help commit heinous crimes, which was obviously allegedly disproven by the victim in a quote. So JP Morgan knew, allegedly, according to the victim, and multiple victims at this point. They knew exactly what Jeffrey Epstein was doing. They didn't care. They were in bed with him. One of the largest banks in this country. Completely corrupt, completely, absolutely degenerate and evil on every freaking measurable instance that you can literally look at. Every measurable constant, every measurable metric. Straight evil, horrible. Knew he was sex trafficking children or even adults. Didn't care. One of the largest banks in the world. Now, that comes off the back of California bill would classify not affirming child's gender as child abuse. That was yesterday's episode. Here's another one. Washington bill to allow medical transgender interventions on minors without parental consent. That's from the New York Post, 417, covered that one. And California to provide transgender surgeries without parental consent. This is from last year, September. We'll cover that soon as well. Now, what does that have to do with what I'm talking about? Children. Children with no ability to consent. The worst. Though, look, to you, maybe not. To me, with 3 kids and somebody that would do unspeakable things to someone that would do that to my child, any of those things, the worst. The worst. Now, that's JP Morgan in this lawsuit settling with their victims of Jeffrey Epstein while allegedly knowing he knew exactly what he was doing. And they knew exactly what he was doing. Now let's hear a word. Let me ask you this. Who do you think is one of the biggest investors, if not the biggest investor of JP Morgan? I will tell you, it's BlackRock. Let's hear a word from BlackRock.
Behaviors are going to have to change, and this is one thing we're asking companies. You have to force behaviors, and at BlackRock we are forcing behaviors. What we are doing internally is, if you don't achieve these levels of impact, your compensation could be impacted. Okay, you have to force behaviors, and if you don't force behaviors, whether it's gender or race or just any way you want to say the composition of your team.
Oh, they're going to force behaviors at the biggest financial investment firm in the world, BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard. Let me tell you this. If we can do to BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street what the average American did to Bud Light and Target, we could right this ship overnight. Overnight. Now, let me give you a little bit more of Habakkuk. The well over 2,000 to 4,000, I don't know how old it is, 2, 3, 4,000 years old. Let me give you a little bit of this paragraph, and let me see if you find this relatable. Again, whether you're religious or not, you could be completely atheist, and I trust that you would absolutely hear these words and know 1,000% what country this sounds like. Woe to him who increases what is not his. For how long? And makes himself rich with loans. Makes himself rich with loans. Will not your creditors rise up suddenly, and those who collect from you awaken? Indeed, you will become plunder for them, because you have looted many nations. All the remainder of the peoples will loot you because of human bloodshed and violence done to the land, to the town and all its inhabitants. Woe to him who gets evil gain for his house, to put his nest on high, to be delivered from the hand of calamity. You have devised a shameful thing for your house by cutting off many peoples, so you are sinning against yourself. Let me repeat. Woe to him who increases what is not his. For how long? And makes himself rich with loans. How much debt is America in? Made themselves rich off loans. Will your creditors rise up suddenly? Will not your creditors rise up? Of course they will. They are right now. Will not your creditors rise up suddenly? And those who collect from you awaken? They are right now in regards to America. Indeed, you will become plunder for them. That's underway. Because you have looted many nations. American imperialism and the war machine to enrich the already rich and the already evil that run this country. Because you have looted many nations. All the remainder of the peoples will loot you. They're coming for their pay. We have to course correct. Because of human bloodshed and violence done to the land, to the town, and all its inhabitants. Woe to him who gets evil gain for his house, to put his nest on high. Religious or not, you tell me. Please like the show, share it, subscribe to my YouTube channel, follow me on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, 5-star review, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. I love you all. I'll see you tomorrow. Galatians 2:20, and I am